We are back. Name change. Bay Area baseball, past, present, and future, rather than Giants baseball and A's baseball. We're combining the two shows, and we're going to pay justice and homage to both sides of the Bay. That's the Bay Area, Northern California, and the San Francisco Giants and Oakland A's. My name is Ralph Tyko. I am the producer and co-host, as Timmy says. He's the star, Timmy Haller. Take it away.
Oh, that's enough of that right there. The only time I was a star was when my grandfather used to tell me, "You're a real star," which in Haller lingo meant you're a real asshole. So there you go.
Well, I had no knowledge of the Haller lingo, but I trust your grandfather's judgment right off the bat.
Yeah, he was right on point all the time. You know, we're joined this evening with the presence of a fine gentleman and quite a major league pitcher in his own right. I'd like to introduce Jim Barr. Thanks for coming on, Jim.
You bet, Tim. My pleasure to be here.
And a belated happy birthday to you, Jim. You had a birthday on February the 10th. You're just a couple of days older than I am.
That's right. You had one yesterday.
Yeah, I did. I had one yesterday as well. My memories take us back to when we were a lot younger and a lot more athletic than we are today. Jim, you know, it's an honor to have you on the show, and you know, what I'd like to ask you is a few questions just about the memories that you have as a San Francisco Giant, and if you would share an anecdote or two about maybe the experiences that you had with my father, Tom, during your years with the Giants.
Wow, you know, you go back a long ways, and the Giants. You know, I played 2 years with the California Angels, but I consider the Giants my home, and I played more years with them nationally and have a lot more memories and things that went on there, people that I know. Plus, I get down to the ballpark, I see a lot of people that I still see once in a while and that I haven't seen for a while, too. So that's pretty special. But, you know, the Giants, you know, people ask me what it was like. You know, they go to AT&T now, and they say what it was like playing in Candlestick. And I go, well, you know, it was good because you were in the major leagues. Some people, they hated the cold, they hated the ballpark, and it wasn't one of the greatest ballparks, especially you know, around summertime when you get to go Midwest back east and it's 80, 90 degrees and humid back there and nice and warm, great to play baseball in. And then you come back to Candlestick to the hard AstroTurf and the cold weather. But, you know, like someone said, hey, at least you're playing in the major league, so what's your complaint? So, you know, somebody asked Pete Rose one time, said, Pete, how come you guys play so well when you come into Candlestick? It's so cold, you know, it's different. He goes, we just take the attitude we're going to come in and kick their butt and hurry up and get out of here. And so I always thought that was pretty neat because some guys, I mean, even guys on our home team that play there all the time just hated Candlestick. But, yeah, it wasn't the greatest place, but you know what? It's your home park. You play, you get used to it. You know what it's like, and you have a job to do. So you can't do your job according, you know, if it's a nice day, I'll play good today because it's nice. It's a cold day. I don't want to play good today. You can't really take that kind of an attitude. So you just went out there and try to do the best you can. Although I did go back a couple of times after I was finished playing and had to sit in the stands, and I said, there's no way I'm sitting in these stands, especially near one of those concourse doors when the doors open and the wind just howls through there. I said, I'm going to go up to the press box and sit there with Lon Simmons. I'm not going to sit in the stands.
Oh my, yeah, it was something else, Candlestick Park, you know, and I was always designated down the right field line pretty much as the ball boy, just in front of the bullpen there on the right field side, and I'll tell you, there were some evenings that I felt like I was going to jump out of my skin. It was so darn cold. You know, I was looking at
we had those long jackets, and they had 10 long jackets that went down to your knee, and they were all fur-lined, nice and warm jackets, and there was only 10 of them, and the only 10 people that could wear them were the people that sat in the bullpen. If you had one on and you were in the dugout, it was like, hey, take that thing off. Those belong to the guys sitting down in the bullpen, because it would get cold when you're just sitting down there.
It really would, and I remember many an evening sitting there and watching that fog roll in over Candlestick Point and just freezing my tail off and hoping to God that Pudgy Lavelle would close the game and we'd get out of there because it was so gosh darn cold. You know, Jim, I was looking at your statistics a little earlier today, and I noticed something that isn't really even talked about. You signed in 1970, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And you went directly to AA ball, is that also correct?
Yes, I did, right to Amarillo.
Right to Amarillo, and then after spending the season in Amarillo, you made the big club, or you came up to the big club the following year. So you really, in essence, didn't even have a full year under your belt professionally, and you were already in the major leagues.
Just a little bit less than a full year. Signed and went. I signed in about mid-June, I guess it was, something like that. Went to Amarillo, and then as soon as the season ended, went to Instructional League in Phoenix, where a lot of the young players go, and some of the guys that I played, Chris Spire, Chris Arnold, guys like that I played with in Amarillo were there. And then the next year was my first spring training ever, and I got invited to big league camp, and I was there till about the last week of camp, and then I went to Phoenix AAA, and then got called up July 31st. So it was just about a year in the minors before I got called up. So it was.
Jim, may I interject and ask you a quick question in relationship to what we were just talking about? Who told you were being called up, and what were the circumstances? Who was the coach or manager that brought you in and said, you're going to be a big leaguer? What was that about?
It's a little bit of a story. We're up in Spokane, Washington, playing against the Dodgers AAA, and at that time at AAA, I was the closer, so I was, coming in to close games, whatever. Well, I hadn't pitched in a game for about 10 days, and we had a couple of one-run games here and so forth and stuff like that, and I wasn't getting called to pitch. I'm going, wow, man, I don't understand why I'm not pitching. So we go to Spokane, and all of a sudden now in a game we're losing 15-5. Jimmy Davenport, who was our manager, says, Jim, go warm up. I go, really? And, well, I didn't really say that, but that was kind of what I thought to myself. They come into the game and go, wow, man, why am I in here 15-5? And so then all of a sudden, well, they had a little thing, and it's one of those things people don't really know, but in Spokane, that if you get 5 hits in a game, you get a color TV. And so Davey comes up to me and says, hey, Tommy Hutton has 4 hits. You give him a pitch. If he gets his 5th hit, he'll get a color TV, and he'll let you pick him off first base. Nothing's hurt. Go, okay, whatever. So first pitch is a little bit outside, and I go, I can't throw it outside. That's a tough pitch to hit. I better throw it inside a little bit. So the next pitch I throw inside. Well, he hits a home run. And as he's rounding the base, he looks at me and goes, hey, I didn't mean to do that. And so I come in, and Davey goes, I told you to give him a hit, not a home run. And so that night, Davey comes up to me after the game and says, congratulations, you and Kingman just got called up to the big club.
Oh, my God. What a story that is.
And Hank Sauer was there, so he flew on the plane with us to San Francisco. So we fly to San Francisco for, a 7:30 game. We're supposed to land around, I think it's 5:30, something like that. Well, we didn't land till like about 7 o'clock because there had been a airplane mishap on the runway. So we had to circle the airport for like 2 hours. You just get called up to big leagues. You're excited about going to the park and everything like that, and now you're sitting in an airplane for 2 hours just circling the airport. until we landed. We got right to the clubhouse about 10 minutes before game time, and so that was it. So that was my first day in the big leagues.
Well, who did you get called up? Did you say Dave Kingman?
Yeah, Kingman and I, we got called up together. We were on the flight together. We played at Phoenix, and we got called up together that day. Wow.
Very, very.
Yeah, that's it. You know, Jim, another thing is your lineage, the history of Jim Barr. You grew up in Linwood out in Southern California. You were drafted 5 times, and you signed your 6 times. You signed your 6th time being with the Giants. But you went to USC, which is a predominantly, a powerhouse when it comes to the NCAA baseball. And you get an opportunity. You finally sign with the Giants. You spend most of your career with the Giants. You go back down to play with the Angels for 2 years, and then back with the Giants. Now, in 82 and 83, you had to make the club. Is that correct, in 1982?
Yes, I did. Spring training in 82, I had to make the club because the 81 season, played 79 and 80 with the Angels. Well, 81, I go to spring training, and I had a sore shoulder, and it just wasn't coming around, so the Angels basically released me right then after partway through spring training. And so I proceeded to work out, get it stronger, get back in shape and everything, like not back in shape, but get the arm back to where I could pitch in the game. And so I did, and I signed with the White Sox AAA team up in Edmonton, Canada. And so that was an experience. That was interesting because at that time I would think I was 34 years old playing AAA ball after playing 10 years in the major leagues. And so I got my shoulder back in shape, and then I came out and I worked out. I called your dad. Somehow I heard about the workouts at Candlestick and this and that and everything, and so I called your dad and said I'd like to, work out with you during the wintertime with the group they had. There was a group of about 20 guys, young guys, working out during the wintertime there at Candlestick. And so he said, sure, no problem. So I went and I was working out and getting in shape, feeling pretty good and everything. And then I asked him about the opportunity. I think I had, back a little fuzzy, but I think I had an agent then, and I had my agent call about an opportunity of going to spring training. So your dad said, sure, we'll invite you to spring training. No guarantees, nothing like that. And I said, no problem. So I went to spring training in 82, and I had to make the club, and I made the club the last week. So, I was so happy to be back in San Francisco and to make the club that I was there in 82, 83.
And things really changed complexion from when you were there the first time to a different regime, with my dad and Frank being there. We don't need to go into any great depth about that, the later regime, my father and Frank, but it was different. And it was just not the same type of an atmosphere, if you will. Say Charlie Fox managing a club and Frank Robinson managing a team. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, Frank, your dad being the general manager, and Frank being kind of a strong-willed person that he meant well in everything he did. At least the time that I was around him and got to know him. That well, just to give you an idea, we were in about halfway through the 80. I think it was the 83 season. Darrell Evans, myself, Chili Davis, and I think it was Joe Morgan. We go into Frank's office and have a meeting with him. We just wanted to talk to Frank about, how Frank got along with the players, things he would say and do, and just overall relationship with the players. And so we're sitting there, and Frank goes, guys, I don't get mad at you personally when you strike out or when you don't. He goes, I'm just upset the team didn't score the run, that we didn't do this, but I'm not mad at you personally. So we all kind of said, okay, well, that's good to hear, and especially for the young players, because young players, they don't know. They want the manager to like them and stuff, but the veterans, we kind of knew what our job was. We knew what we had to do, so it was no big deal. So after Frank goes, I'm not mad at you personally when you strike out or whatever. So Chili Davis, he looks at him and he goes, so that means if I go out there today and I strike out 4 times, you won't be mad at me? And we all look at Chili and go, no, wrong analogy, Chili. Frank just shook his head, but that's kind of how Frank was, though. He was just tough because he wanted everything to be so good, because Frank was a great player. He was a tough player. And he just wanted everybody to kind of play like him. Well, not everybody plays that same way. So it was a little bit strained with some of the players and how they got along with Frank.
Well, very few superstar managers have ever been successful.
A lot of them are those. A lot of them.
They have these high expectations.
They have to sit back there and they have to do so much to call the game, do stuff, and they sit there and they watch so much that they see everything that goes on, so they understand.
Right. Well, yeah, and I have to agree with you. Growing up in my household, it was a blessing. It was, it was enchanting to grow up the son of Tom Haller. And my dad had a perspective that was unique, and really very few people have I met in the game that had that type of, I don't know what you want to call it, insight or incredible patience, and he actually just loved everybody that he, worked with. As far as the players, that either when he was playing or coaching or as an executive, he had a compassion for the guys that were out there on the field all the time. And he was just the same way at home. He was nurturing. He was a leader. And at the same time, he wouldn't take, any laziness, or if you're not trying, he would let you know that you can do better than that. And I know that, while he was there as the general manager, it was disappointing to him because he wanted to obviously succeed and excel, as far as the club was concerned. And then that whole transition, it was after you had left. I know you were done playing, but Davy came in to manage, and things kind of went south after that for the club and my dad and Davy. But give me some memories of your experiences with my father.
Well, about the only ones I really had are, like I said, when he was the general manager, and I know probably the two that really come to mind, and probably really only actually I guess there would be three, and that would be the day I got released by the Giants in 1970, in 81, and then when I went in to talk to your dad about coming to work out, like I said, during those wintertime workouts and stuff like that, getting to talk to him, he said, sure, Jim, we'd love to have, of course, knowing your dad for as many years I did, it was like, well, I'm not really going in talking to the general manager. I'm going in talking to a friend that I've known for many years, and sit down. And then probably the third one, which to me was probably the one I like the most, is when your dad called and told me that, hey, Jim, you made the club in 82, coming back to the Giants. Congratulations. So those were the three that I remember the most. Of course, knowing your dad and all the wintertime too, and players around the area and stuff like that. I mean, like Davy and Vida and Lon. It's just so many guys, goes on and on and on in that whole Bay Area, that we all saw each other during the wintertime, during the season and everything like that. So we all became really good friends.
Yeah, and that was something about those clubs that, even though, they didn't win, there was always this really tight-knit group of guys. my memories just, they served me well. I remember just the camaraderie and the closeness. Of course, you always had a knucklehead or two on every club, but, there was something to be said about that. And, did you face my dad in 1971? Did you guys ever play against each other?
In 71, he would have been with the Dodgers then?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember facing him, but I came up in midway through the year in 71, but he was there, but I don't recall facing him at that time.
Yeah.
Jim, that was the year of the Fox, 1971, when you guys made it to the playoffs against Pittsburgh. And one of the first three people I interviewed in my whole life, formally for a show, was Charlie Fox. Leonard Koppett was the first, and Charlie might have been second or third. He gave me an hour and a half on camera that was so incredible for me because I was a New York Giant fan growing up, and he was a native New Yorker who came up and in 1943 and caught people like Carl Hubble and Bill Voisell, whose nephew has been a guest on my show. So it was terrific. I want to know as much as I can about Charlie Fox. Give me a Charlie Fox story that I haven't heard, and I'd love that.
Charlie kind of gave you that tough guy thing, in which he was a little bit. He wanted everybody to play hard, do everything they had to do, and because I think Charlie was a Green Beret. And so he always passed off that Green Beret thing and, how tough we would do this and we would do that. And so, okay, Charlie, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. But probably the one story that really stands out, it was, if you understand the way candlestick dugouts were, they're ground level right there. And Charlie would always stand at the end of the dugout right up there at the corner. And then there was about 4 steps that went down into a tunnel, and that tunnel went for about 75 yards or so up into the clubhouse. Well, Charlie would stand right there at that corner of the dugout right there. And so one day, there's a pop-up hit. Dave Rader was catching. There's a pop-up hit in the foul territory, and Charlie steps outside the dugout, and he looks up, and he looks over at Dave and says, no, 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 like the ball's going into the stand. All of a sudden, that ball came down and hit Charlie right on top of the head. And of course, you could hear the fans over on the third base side. They all kind of ooh and start laughing. But the ones on the first base side, they couldn't see what happened. And of course, the whole dugout, we're trying to just all go down the other end of the dugout. We're trying to keep from laughing so hard because Charlie got hit. And he starts to stumble down those steps, and no one really caught him. It wasn't because we didn't want to. It was just because we were laughing so hard we didn't know what to do. And he comes up, and his hat is off kilter on his head, and he looks down the dugout, and he goes, I don't want to see one guy laughing. And, of course, we're all laughing at the time. But that, for Charlie was just a tough guy, but he would always give you advice. He would be the first one. If he would tell you to do something or he wanted you to change it, he would give you the advice and explain to you what he meant by it, which a lot of guys, they just say, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, but they wouldn't explain to you what they meant or how to change it. But Charlie would do that.
Jim, with your love of ball, how come you didn't get into coaching on the big league level?
At the big league level, I would have loved the last 10 or 15 years. I really wanted to do it. I say I wanted to do it, but I never really did anything about doing it. I just kind of just dreamed about it. But in the pro level, when I got out of ball, I had a construction business there in the Bay Area. Did that. Well, I did it while I was playing, and then I did it for about 2.5 years when I quit playing. Then I moved to Sacramento here to open a fast food restaurant and did that for 12 years. Then at the same time, while I was doing that, I was also coaching at Sac State University. I did that for 16 years. And right now I'm at the local high school here, Granite Bay High School, and I'm going into my 7th year doing that. And I enjoy coaching, and that's one thing that's good here at the high school. We've got a head coach that's super. We've got a first-round draft pick, a left-handed pitcher that was a first-round draft pick, maybe about 15 to 20 years ago. He's our pitching coach. We have a guy that caught AAA for the Angels. He's our catching and one of our hitting instructors. Then we have a infield coach that played independent ball. So we've got, and our head coach lets us all coach whatever, like me. Of course, I always like to think, as a pitcher that we know how to hit. So I'm always trying to tell the hitters how to hit and stuff because I've seen so many guys hit balls off me. I know what they're doing right.
You were a respectable hitter, though. I saw you lace a few doubles when you were playing for the Giants, so you could hit the ball a little bit too, and you took great pride in it too. You wanted to hit.
I tried to really make contact. One thing pitchers always do during batting practice, they'd always have home run hitting contests. Well, I would be in it, but I would never try to hit home runs because I'm not going to hit a home run. So I'm just going to try and make good contact, hit line drives, and nobody wanted me on their team because I could never hit a home run during batting practice. But the one thing I probably really, took pride in and enjoyed doing was bunting because I knew if it meant anything, if there's a guy on base and there's no outs and I come up the bat, well, guess what I'm doing? I'm not swinging away. I'm bunting. If there's a situation to move a guy over and I come up the bat, I'm bunting. They're not going to be letting me swing away. So, and if I could bunt, that allowed me to stay in the game for 2 to 3 innings more because if that situation came up and I couldn't bunt, well, guess what? They're pinch hitting for you and you're out of the game now. So if you wanted to add a few more innings onto your outing that day, you learned how to bunt and handle the bat a little bit. So that's one thing I like doing, but the coaching, I kind of always wanted to be in pro ball coaching because one thing I would like to have done would be a roving instructor. I don't think after retiring and in business and doing that stuff, I kind of wanted to stay home, see my daughter, see my family, stuff like that. So I didn't really want to coach and be halfway across the country at one city for 7 months out of the year. I would much rather have the opportunity to go to all the cities within that organization and then come home for a week and then go visit all those cities and talk to the players and do things and then come home for a week and stuff like that. To me, that would have been, I would have really enjoyed doing that.
Well, I think the greatest memories that I have of you, Jim, as a kid, a teenager, and is your makeup, your nature, and that was you were really ultra competitive. You wanted to win, and you wanted to do well. You wanted to contribute to the success of that win. And I'm gonna share a little story because you may not remember this in your lifetime. And I don't even remember what year it was, but I want to say it was probably 1978. And I'm thinking, was Joe Altobelli managing then?
Yes, he was.
Okay. And I think that year for you personally wasn't one of your better seasons. It wasn't poor by any means, but it wasn't to your standards, if you will. And it was a disappointing season. I think the club started out like gangbusters, if I recall, and then they kind of faded, the second half of the season. And I'll never forget. You ate up a lot of innings. I mean, in the middle of your career, you threw well over 200 innings for consecutive years. And a lot of things that people don't even know. You threw 76 complete games and 24 shutouts. And I don't think that's something that people really are aware of. In this day and age, that's unheard of, obviously. You don't hear guys going,
How many complete games are there in a year?
Right. But I will never forget this, and it was something that to this day I just admire about you. And it was actually a conversation that my dad and I had about you on the way home from the ballpark one day or one night. And he said, I love Jim Barr because of he's got guts. He's got what my dad used to refer to, he called it intestinal fortitude. And that's why my dad liked you so much, because you wanted the ball and you wanted to do well. And I'll never forget, it was late in the year because the guys from the minor leagues were called up. And you know how, Jim, remember how they would put the lockers, Murph would put lockers around the middle of the clubhouse, a candlestick?
In the middle of the clubhouse, that's right.
Yeah, guys like Guy Stulars and Joe Patini and the guys that they called up from AAA or AA would be in the middle of the clubhouse in these makeshift lockers. And I think you got yanked. You got pulled out. It was a tough performance for you. You actually came into the clubhouse. Usually I don't think you even did that, but because it wasn't one of your better outings and you were frustrated and the club was struggling, I was in there getting towels and stuff into a shopping cart ready for laundry. And I'll never forget this. You came in, it was just me and who was it? Eddie Logan, not Logan, but the trainer, the older trainer. And it was just a couple of us in the clubhouse. And you got over to your locker, and I was standing over by those makeshift lockers with the guys they'd called up, and you took your duty bag, which had your shaving cream and your razor and assorted goodies in your duty bag, and you grabbed it and you threw it, and you threw it just about 2 feet above my head on the pillar that was up above my head that came down in the middle of the room, that huge concrete column. Do you remember that? And I'll never forget, about 20 or 25 minutes later, you came up to me and you said, Timmy, I'm so sorry. You know, and I'd never seen you get that angry before. But that's when I knew what a bulldog you were, what a competitor. And I'll never forget that.
Well, I appreciate that, and a lot of that comes from my days at USC. The coach we had there, he taught everybody how to play the game. If you were an outfielder, you learned what the job of a pitcher was. If you're an infielder, you learned what the job of an outfielder was. He taught everybody the whole game, and that our number one responsibility is to win the game. And so when I became a base runner, and I got to pinch run a few times, a dozen times or so for McCovey late in the game, not because I was fast, but because I was a pitcher and I had a little bit of an idea how to run the bases, and because they didn't want to use a position guy that might have to use him to pinch hit later in the game, so they'd waste a pitcher. So they put me on base. Well, I was always taught my only responsibility is do not let them turn a double play. You have to go into second base, and they cannot relay that throw to first and get a double play. You have to do whatever you can to break up two. So that was one of the part of my learn. Whenever I got on the field, I just did what I had to do because that's what I was taught is you do your job to help the team win no matter what it was. Once you release the ball as a pitcher, become an infielder, so you have to do all those things. You can't just say, well, I'm a pitcher, this is all I know how to do. No, there's too many other things. So, your dad was, we had one incident that I tell the story about me and Frank Robinson. We were in New York on the mound, and Frank wanted to take me out of the game, and I didn't really want to come out of the game, and so many words were said, this and that and everything, and so Frank got really mad, and so I walked off the mound. I came into the dugout, and then we had some more words in the dugout and so forth, and he told me to go in the clubhouse. I went in the clubhouse, and the first guy I called, I wasn't in the clubhouse for 10 seconds. I called up because your dad was on the trip, and I said, Tom, you better come down here because we're going to have a discussion. Frank and me. And so he goes, okay, Jim, I'll be right down there. Do not move in front of your locker. I said, okay. So as soon as the game ended, in walks Frank, and then in walks your dad and said, Jim, come on in. So the three of us went in the office, and I was the first one to talk, and I apologized to Frank what I did and all this and everything. And then I said, but I think what you did to him, Frank didn't like that, so he told me to get out of his office. Well, I put a little bit of heat on your dad because I said, well, I'll leave when he tells me to. He invited me in here, meaning your dad. And Frank didn't like that. So I could just see your dad go, oh, Jim, thanks, man. So I sat there, and then all of a sudden your dad goes, okay, Jim, you can go. And I got up and left. I think from that day on, I think your dad always said, God darn, man, don't ever put me in that situation again. But
well, you know, and
your toughness. This is
and we know. Yeah, we know JV, and I call you JV because that's what we called you, and that I mean that with great affection and great memory. But you know, we know that there was not any love lost between my dad and Frank. You know, there were some issues between the two of them, and it was difficult because they were both type A type of personalities, and that we know ultimately their goal was to win. Their philosophies of getting to that place were a little different, but I think that they both respected each other without a doubt. And they just their personalities just didn't always, you know, click. And I think a lot of it too was a little bit overblown with the media and the way the press perceived it as well. But Dad had great admiration, great love for you, as do I. And I'm so grateful that you know, you took some time out to talk to us tonight and relive a little bit of the history of your career. And I just want to express to you my gratitude, Jim. Thanks for showing up tonight.
I appreciate that. You know, it's always fun to talk to people about the days when we played and stuff like that, because like you remembered a couple of stories and stuff that normally I wouldn't think of at that time, but I remember a lot of them, and then it rings a bell in my head, and then I'll remember a story. And you know, when we played. When you're out there for 182 days, you play 162 games in 182 days, plus spring training, you know, and you're with the same guys all the time. You do that for, you know, like myself for 12 years. You come across a lot of situations, a lot of stories. Things happen. Sometimes you've got to, you know, you can't get too high and you can't get too low. So in order to maintain that stability and maintain your without going crazy or whatever, there's certain things that happen, and so we all have people that we remember things about. And
well, baseball is a microcosm of life, and just you're saying that can't get too high, can't get too low, and times you're low, you got to remember that you'll be high again. Times you're high, you got to take it nice and easy because you know that life might bring you down again. So. Excellent. May I ask you one thing before Tim closes it out? I just put two and two together. You and Dave Kingman were called up together, but you played at USC together. Am I correct?
Yes, we did. Yep. Dave.
How good an athlete was Dave Kingman? I remember he could go from first to third when he first came up in 71. Faster than anybody I've seen. He had these long, sloping strides. You know, not sloping, but
he had such strong forearms and strong hands. He could take an inside pitch and look like he's not hitting it very hard, and he could easily clear the left field wall. At SC, he'd done that when he first came to SC. Funny thing about Dave, when he first came to SC, he was a JC transfer out of, I think it was Illinois. And so Dado brings him in, and of course he comes in mid-year, and he's not eligible to play because he's a transfer, this and that. So he just works out his first year. That would have been his, I think his sophomore part of his junior year. Yeah, it was his junior year because he only played there 1 year. And so Dado brought him in, and he'd work out. Well, he was, at that time when he first came there, he was probably 70% pitcher, 30% other position. Of course, there was no DH, so everybody hit. But as a pitcher, Dado would have him throw batting practice. Well, the Major League style batting cage, the size of that and everything. Well, Dado would pitch, Kingman would pitch, and he literally would throw the ball outside the cage. And not the whole cage. And of course, guys, the hitters go, and of course, Dado wasn't always at practice because he had a very successful trucking business, and everybody knew what we had to do. The plan would already be up, and the seniors, the veterans would get practice going. We start batting practice. Kingman's pitching batting practice. And all of a sudden, after a few guys, the hitters go, if Kingman's throwing batting practice, we are not hitting. I'm not getting in that cage with him. Dado would show up at practice, and we should be about halfway through practice, and we're almost done. And Dado goes, how come you guys are almost done? Didn't you hit? And they all go, you had Kingman down throwing batting practice. We're not taking batting practice if he's pitching. He could literally throw the ball all over the place because he could throw hard, and he had a big curveball. But then after part of his first year of fall ball and stuff like that, as the season went, he became more of a hitter because he was so strong. He had such strong hands and wrists that it was just unbelievable.
Okay, Jimmy, one more. My good friend, John DeQuisto. You guys pitched together a long time. A Johnny D story.
A Johnny D story. We're in Atlanta. And Johnny was a little inconsistent when he would throw. He could throw hard by those standards, by our standards back then, but he was a little inconsistent, pitch-wise, and not throwing too many strikes. Well, we're back in Atlanta, and he's pitching a game, and he gets into about the 7th inning, and he's walked a guy here, walked a guy there during the game, giving up a few hits. And he's throwing his typical game, but he's having a good game. We're winning the game, but he's got guys on base every inning. And so then all of a sudden it gets into the 9th inning, and he gets this, I think it was a Horner. He gets Horner up there, and he's got 2 guys on base, and he throws a 3-2 curveball to strike him out. And we're down in the bullpen, and we go, you got to be kidding. How do you throw a 3-2 curveball for a strike when you can't throw a strike with that curveball in any other count? And he comes after the game, and he goes, I just had the confidence I could throw for a strike. And we just all started laughing, going, you got to be kidding. There's no way you could have been thinking that because you can't throw for a strike if you want to. Johnny D had confidence, so much confidence in himself that we all just laughed because, it just, he could throw hard, and when he was on, he was good, but it was funny to watch because when he was off, he was off.
I got one more question. The day that Halicki pitched a no-hitter, he pitched it against the Mets.
Against the Mets.
And it was a doubleheader, and I don't know if it was the first game or the second game, where Kingman hits a home run to center field. Do you remember him doing it with one? He was fooled on the pitch, and he literally hit the ball with one hand into the center field.
That doesn't surprise me because, like I said, he was so strong in his hands and wrists. He could hit a ball that was inside, outside, and it looked like it not taking a full swing, but the ball just come off his bat sometimes. So because of his hand, and he didn't look like he was, a tall guy, but he wasn't real big. And so you just wonder, God, how can he do that? But I don't remember that particular one, but I remember a lot of different times when he hit balls that you were just amazed at the type of swing he would take. It wasn't a perfect swing, and yet the ball would just rock it out.
Okay, my final question. Are you amazed that was like 40 years ago, what we're talking about? And how does it just go fast for me, or has it flown? And I'll ask that rhetorically to both you guys. Is this unbelievable? We're talking about 75 to now is 40 freaking years. 30.
It's funny because I coach high school now, and of course, those kids, they're only 17, 18 years old. And try to tell them stories about back when I played, and you tell the story, and it's almost like they look at you like, wow, you were alive way back then? You remember stuff from way back then? And
right.
And it is amazing that it was 40 years ago, but like I said, when you do things, when you enjoy it and things happen, you remember the good days. Oh, and you remember a lot of the bad days too.
Right,
yeah.
But you try to remember the good days more. It's called selective memory. You have to be having been married to appreciate that one at one time or another.
That's right.
Wives call husbands on selective memory all the time. But thank God for it. Let's put it that way.
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy, anything to add?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just, Jim probably fall over in his chair. I turned 54 yesterday, JB, and it seems like oftentimes it was just yesterday that I was playing, and I was even running around that clubhouse, getting in everybody's way. And I can hear the murmurs now, shit, Haller's kids running around here again. But
kid and Bobby Bond, Barry. And I
yeah.
know a story about Barry. Oh shoot, man! I've known Barry ever since he was 2 feet tall and 3, 4 years old, 5 years old. And Barry would come into the clubhouse and he'd be like 5 or 6 years old, real little, and he'd be carrying a bat. And, and he'd kind of swing at a wiffle ball or something like that. And so we'd soft toss little balls to him like that, and he'd hit it. Well, there was always time, I tell a story, that we'd go down outside, down by the bullpen down there, and we're flipping balls to him, and he'd be hitting it. Well, all of a sudden we'd flip one right at him or right behind him just to see how he would react. And then people go, oh, so you're the one responsible for the way Barry acts now. And, we were just having fun with him.
Well, you never did that to me. But you never really did that to me. I remember going out to shag, though, and you guys would move to the other side of the outfield. I remember those days.
If their ball was hit too far, man, we don't want to go get it. We say, hey, Timmy, go get
it. Oh, my goodness. But it seems like yesterday, too, in a lot of ways. It just seems like it's just gone by so quickly. And what a wonderful, charmed life we've been able to live and be a part of. Giants history and not so much myself, of course, but I don't even know if you knew this or not. In 81, the Giants drafted me out of high school. I didn't sign, but Gary Davenport and I were both drafted one round right after another. And of course, Gary's been with the club for 14 years now, coaching. And then later, a year later, I signed with the Baltimore Orioles. So, it just seems to just fly by. And now at my age, I'm almost at that point where I can start pulling some Social Security.
All right, go get it.
Just like that. But go get it is right. But Jim, again, I want to just extend to you my gratitude for you being on with us this evening, and it was so good to see you a few weeks ago at Fantasy Camp, and I hope that in the coming year maybe we'll see each other at the ballpark up at AT&T and quite possibly again next spring down at Fantasy Camp, and I really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Great, no problem. I appreciate it, Tim. It's always good to talk to you, and it was great I know when I saw you down at Fantasy Camp, like you said, I hadn't seen you in a long time, so it was nice to be able to see you then and talk to you then, too. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Well, that's our show for tonight, Ralphie.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Thank you, Timmy. And everybody out there, keep on keeping on. We'll catch you next week on the Flip Flop. Adios, everybody. Thanks.
Be well. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Adios.
Thanks, Ralph.